Hello and welcome to a
Coding Rainbow.
coding challenge. Today's coding challenge, I'm going to attempt to make a Flappy Bird clone, which I admit is kind of like a bit of a cliche probably at this point. I don't know how many people have made Flappy Bird clone tutorial whatever's in the world, but it was requested. I think it'll be fun. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to do it in JavaScript. I'm going to try to do it fast, but with time to explain and time to relax and just enjoy myself, and hopefully you might enjoy watching this. So if you're not familiar with Flappy Bird, then I would say pause this video, go and familiarize yourself with it. I actually don't think I've ever actually played it before, but I am somewhat familiar with the gameplay. We'll see how well I do. I've got a live chat going on, and you guys can tell me how I'm doing. If you're watching this as a YouTube archive, you won't be able to follow along live, but that's fine. Okay, so I'm using P5.js, which is a JavaScript framework, has a function setup, it has a function draw, and so the only thing I've got so far in the browser is just a canvas that's 400 by 600 pixels and a black background on that canvas. So the first thing that I want to do, I actually have a separate JavaScript file called bird.js, and I'm actually going to make this a constructor function. And the bird, all the bird really needs is a y value, right? The bird moves up and down and it stays in one spot. So I'm going to give this bird, I'm going to start the bird off in the center of the window, and I'm going to write also a function called show, where I draw the bird. And again, my design is going to be very poor. So it's going to be up to you to take my code, which will be linked in this description, and make something more beautiful and interesting and riff off of this. So I'm just going to say, let's make a white circle. And you know what? Let's give this bird an X position as well, even though it will be fixed. But let's just try 25 for right now. And I'm going to never forget that this dot, you always need this dot in JavaScript. So let's make this bird a circle. And let's say in the main program now, var bird. And we're going to say bird equals new bird. And bird.show. So we should have something a little bit more interesting now. There it is, bird, width divided by 2. You know, it would probably make more sense if I want the bird to be in the middle, to be height divided by 2. So let's fix that. I'm going to say height divided by 2. I think the bird could be a little bit bigger, and the bird could be a little bit more in on the screen. So there we go. This is the beginning of Flappy Bird. Now what happens to the bird without you doing anything? The bird falls down. So, oops, wrong window. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say this.update equals function. And it would be good to have some sort of variable called gravity. And gravity being the force that's pushing that bird down. And let's say that the gravity here is going to be 1. I also need a velocity, right? I need a velocity. So gravity is the force that's causing the velocity of the bird to increase. So I'm going to say this.velocity equals 0. And now I'm going to say this.y changes by this.velocity. And this.velocity changes by this.gravity. Okay? So now we have a function that's going to push that bird down. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say also bird.update. There we go. Bye, bird. It flew down. Now, we should probably do something where the bird stops when it gets to the bottom of the window. That makes sense. So I'm going to go back to the bird, and I'm going to say, I'll just do this in the update function. I could write a separate, and I'm going to say if this.y is greater than height, then I'm just going to keep the bird on the screen. I'm going to say this.y equals height, and I'm also going to set that velocity to 0. So we can see here, that bird stops. I don't know if that's actually what happens in Flappy Bird, but I just kind of want to do that anyway. And you know what? I'm going to do that also for the top of the window, because ultimately I'm going to be able to push the bird up. So let's do that for less than 0. So, now, of course, so now, how does the game work? I think it's a mobile game, right? You could tap your mobile device. This is my mobile device. So as a tap, I'm going to just use the space bar on my keyboard. So in P5.js, I can write a function called keyPressed. And I can check to see if the key is the space bar. And let me just make sure this is working. I'm just going to console log something right now. So I'm going to run this. And you can see each time I press the space bar, it says here in the console, it prints out space. So that worked. So what do I want to do? I want to cause a force to cause that bird to go up. So I'm going to say bird.up. And so what's going to happen with this bird.up function? What do I want to do? I want, instead of the velocity being pushed down by gravity, I want to say this dot velocity minus equals, I want it to go up, or I could say plus equals, but some minus amount. Now, what if I just said minus this dot gravity? Let's try that for a second, just to see what happens. Come on. Wait, oh, you know what's a little bit annoying? I have to, oh, I took off that console.log. Hold on. Let's say minus equals this dot gravity times 10. So nothing's working here. And I have a kind of a sneaking suspicion that I've done something totally wrong. Bird.up. Let's make sure this is happening. I'm going to say print line this dot velocity. OK, so you can see that's working. So let's try to tune. I think there's sort of an issue here where we've got to sort of tune the numbers. So let's make the gravity, just for right now, a lot less strong, so it's not going so fast. Now you can see, though, that this isn't really doing very much. Let's make a this dot up force. Let's call this lift. And we'll say it's negative 10. So I'm going to say this dot velocity plus equal this dot lift. Not left, lift. There we go. So you can see there's sort of an element of tuning those numbers. So now it doesn't really feel like it's falling fast enough, but me pushing the spacebar is kind of working. Now, what happens if I hold down the spacebar? So that's good. OK, so that lift is too much. Let's make the gravity 0.6, and let's keep the lift there. But now I'm going to need to make the lift a little bit stronger. There we go. So now I sort of have the game going. The lift is a little bit too strong. Let's make it less strong. So there's, something that I could do is actually limit the top speed, or also like give it some. Something that I could also do is add some like air resistance in general, which I could say something like this dot velocity times equals 0.9. So that actually like helps with things quite a bit, because it's just there's sort of like a limit to what the speed is. So now I've got something that is a bit more kind of like reasonable to play here. So you could spend your time tuning this even more, but I think just like keeping the velocity, keeping some like air resistance by always shrinking the velocity a little bit, tuning how much the lift is versus the gravity, those types of things you can kind of play around with. OK, so now we have the basic game mechanic here, which is just a falling circle, and each time I press the space bar, I can kind of like have it lift up a little bit. Now, what do we need to add? We need to add those pipe things that kind of come from the right of the screen. I'm only at 8 minutes, by the way, which is pretty good. Those pipes things that come from the right of the screen, and you have to steer your way through. Let's see if we can do this. So let's think about this. I'm going to also create a pipe object with a constructor function. And let's think about, what does a pipe need? So a pipe needs, I would say, it's going to extend from the top to somewhere in the middle of the screen, and then somewhere further down to the bottom. So I need, I'm going to say like a value called top, which is going to be some random amount between the top of the screen and the middle of the screen. And let's say this dot bottom is some random amount also between the middle of the screen and the bottom of the screen. And the pipe also needs an x position, which is always going to start at the edge of the screen. And then let's write a function called show, where I draw the pipe as white, fill white, and I draw a rectangle at this dot x, comma 0, all the way with a width of like, let's say the width is 20, and let's actually make that a variable. And this width and also the height then is this dot top. And then I need another rectangle, which starts from the bottom minus how tall it is. And let's make minus this dot bottom, and its height is this dot bottom. Okay, in case this isn't making sense to you, let's actually do a quick diagram here. What I'm trying to do is create something that looks like this. So I need two random numbers. This length is what I'm calling top. This length is what I'm calling bottom. And then this length, this width is what I'm calling W. So I first draw a rectangle from here with this width with a height of top. And then I draw a rectangle from here, which is height minus bottom, which is this point with this width, and then the height of that rectangle is bottom. So this is what I'm getting. And if these values are random, I'll sometimes get stuff that looks like this, etc. Now, I could be more thoughtful. Like right now, the way that I'm doing it, there's this, you could never get something that looks like this. So it probably would make I could probably do something different where I pick like a random empty amount of space and then I pick a random starting point for that empty amount of space. That might be interesting to do. We can make that as an improvement later, but let's just stick with what I have right now, which I think is good enough. Okay, I'm back over here, and let's just see, now I need a function like this dot update. And all I want to do in this dot update is say this dot x minus equals some speed, this dot speed. So let's say this dot speed is always going to be 5. I'm going to just, and so all of these are always going to move to the left. So let's look now here in Sketch. I'm going to create an array called pipes. And what I'm going to do is say pipes.push, a new pipe. And then in draw, I'm going to say for all of the pipes in the array. Yeah, I also have a problem with this. Somebody in the chat is saying where I could technically have a pipe with no space in it. So all that stuff can be corrected later. And I want to say show, and I want to say update. So let's run this now and see. There we go. Ooh, that's moving quite fast. So let's go back to the pipe and let's just make the speed 1. So we can see, look, we basically have Flappy Bird already. And it's so easy to play. So it's moving kind of slow. Now, but of course I only have one. So let's think about this. A couple things that I want to do. One is I want to say something like if frame count, I want to have a pipe every like so often, modulus 40 equals 0, which means every 40 frames. The modulus operator being the remainder of division. So anytime a number is divisible by 40 with a remainder of 0 is 0, 40, 80, 120, 160, etc. Let's add a new pipe. And let's see how this looks. Oh, that's a lot of every 40 frames is quite a few. Oh, look at this. Oh, I'm pretty good at this. I need some like music to play along with this. Okay, so that's no good, obviously. Let's make the pipes move a little bit faster, twice as fast, and let's say every 100 frames. So obviously you can see how the speed of the pipes, how frequent they are. And we can see basically I have the game right now. Now I've made a very easy version of the game to play. It's not very hard. But one thing that I haven't done is figure out when I need to actually, I'm doing a great job here. So let's actually add something that shows us when the circle hits the pipe or doesn't hit the pipe. So, and also, by the way, I should be getting rid of the pipes at some point. So one thing I should do is I should say, if pipes index I is finished, and I can actually just say x is less than 0. And you know what? I'm going to write a function. I'll write a function called offScreen. So if the pipe is off the screen, I want to say pipes.splice I1. So splice is a function that deletes an element from the array. So I want to know if the pipe went off the screen, get rid of it. I don't need it anymore. Now, of course, there's a little bit of an issue here, which is there's no such thing as a function called offScreen. That's a function I have to write. There's another issue here, which is that when I'm deleting stuff out of the array, I really should go through the array backwards. And I've covered that in other videos, but basically the array slides, the elements slide back, and if I'm going forwards, the elements slide back. While I'm going forward, I could end up skipping things. So I'm just going to switch my loop to saying greater than or equal to 0 and I minus minus. And then I'm going to, if I run this, right, no function named offScreen, so I have to go into the pipe, then I have to write a function called this.offScreen is a function, and this is very simple. I can just say if this dot x is less than negative w, right? Because I want it to be all the way off. So its width has to be all the way off. Return true, else return false. And now I know all of you watching this video are going to complain to me and just say, but couldn't you just say return this dot x is less than negative w? Because that evaluates to true or false. Yes, I could do that. But you know what? Sometimes I like to write my code this way. I like it to be long-winded, multiple lines. I love the way the curly brackets just nest themselves so beautifully. I love to say return true, return false. You can write your code a different way. But yeah, and now I sort of feel like I should change it. But I'm not going to. I'll do it later. OK, so coming back, let's see. Now we should see, oops, w is not defined. So I have to say this dot. Always forget the this dot. This dot's on. OK, now we should see. Now, I can't really tell if this is working. I can only assume this is working. But if I do something, if I say like this, pipes.length, if I look at the length of that array, it's 2, and it's always 2. So even though I'm adding more and more, they're getting deleted. OK, so we can be pretty sure that that's working. OK, now. Let's see, now we've got to do the exciting part here. I mean, this whole thing hopefully is somewhat exciting, but we've really got to get the gameplay mechanic where it's going to give you some visual feedback if you hit one of those pipes. So let's think about how we might write this. Ultimately, here's where I have this single bird that says bird.update, bird.show, and I'm also looping through all the pipes. So one thing I could do, I don't really need to do it this way, but I'm going to move this loop first. Just so the bird comes after. And I'm going to say here, I'm going to say if pipes index I hits the bird, then do something. I'm just going to say console.log hit. So I need to have a function that determines if a pipe has hit the bird. So if looking at this bit of code, you can see here, what do I need to write? I need to write a function called hits, and that function is going to be part of the pipe object, and it's going to receive a bird object as an argument. So I'm going to go to the pipe object. I'm just going to write the function up there here. This dot hits, I called it hits, equals function bird. And now I just need to check. What do I need to check? I need to check if bird.y is less than the top, and bird or bird.y is greater than height minus this dot bottom. So if the bird is ever, if I come back here to my whiteboard, if the bird is ever, right, less than top or greater than height minus bottom here, then it's kind of, it's hitting that pipe. So let's come back over here. Did I get that right? It's greater than, OK. So then I want to say return true. Although this isn't good enough, right? It's also got to be within the actual x position. So we should also say, and I could be much better about how I construct this, but I'm going to inside here. Go. So let's just say it's within that stuff. Also, let's now check if bird.x, its x position is greater than this dot x and bird.x is less than this dot x plus this dot w. So I'm also just checking if it's in between the actual x position of the pipe. So if all of that is true, I'm going to return true. You know, I'm just working it out. This double if statement is kind of an awful way to write this, and I could probably be more clever, and I could write a separate function that just tests intersection between a circle and a rectangle. But right now, this will be good enough for us right now. And I look forward to hearing your improvements and suggestions in the comments. So let's just see here whoops. Right now, I'm not seeing anything. Hit. So this is basically working. You can see that anytime, this is going to be hard. Hard. So let's actually give ourselves some visual feedback. If this is the case, let's write a variable called highlight, set it equal to false. Let's also say this dot highlight equals true. And then under show, I'm going to say if this dot highlight, I'm going to say I'm going to make it red. So let's just see if this gives us some nice visual feedback. Oh, you know what? I never set highlight equal to false. So watch, it hits it. So, that's fine, but I might want to actually also say this dot highlight equals false. So if it's not hitting it. So now, here we go. It hits it, you can see. So now I could add things like score. I could be more careful about, like I'm really only checking the center. Go, 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 go. Whoa, whoa. This is way too easy to play. Oh, there we go, okay. So you get the idea. So I think that I've kind of completed this. There's a lot of improvements that I would want to make to this in terms of being more thoughtful about checking that intersection to be a bit more precise. Good enough, though. I could do a better job of picking the way that, here's a difficult one. A better job of how I pick the top and bottom heights of these rectangles. I could add score, right? You start with a score. Maybe as time goes on, your score goes up. Every time you hit a pipe, the score goes down. All those things. I would say ask me your questions in the comments. Make versions of this and tweet me your exciting design. You could make a nice bird design. You could reimagine this entire game to not be a bird and pipes, but to be a flower and rainbows. I don't know how that would work. Tweet me and share with me all of your interesting variations on this, and I'll maybe come back and do a Q&A video where I follow up on some of your questions and make some improvements to this Flappy Bird challenge. Okay? Thanks for watching, and I will see you in a future coding challenge. Goodbye.